When you were a kid, you weren't thinking about what type of schedule do I want to have as a vet? What type of family do I want to have as a vet? What type of experience do I want to have as a vet? What type of clients do I want to work with? What type of boss do I want to work for? What type of organization do I want to work for? What values are important? How much money do I want to make as a vet? These things didn't cross your mind when you were 5 years old telling your parents or whoever your guardian was that you wanted to be a veterinarian. So now it's time for us to revamp what that ideal is.
Idealization has provided me with relief from anxiety, relief from stress, and it helped me plan things, but also helped me to focus on the good, helped me to focus on that ideal, because we know what we focus on grows.
You can be who you want to be. You can have what you want to have. You can do what you want to do in life and in any given situation and in any moment in time.
So the good life is a process, not a state of being. It's a direction, not a destination.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Exploratory, our Get MotiVETed podcast. My name is Dr. Quincy Hawley, and I am joined today by Renee Machel, our co-host, and we are both really excited to be here with you all today. Renee, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I love Mondays.
Yes, and I love Mondays as well. And today we have a very special topic, one that is near and dear to me. I probably say that about every single topic we talk about. But this one is specifically really important. Today, guys, we're talking about idealization, and I'm going to explain what that is today, why it's so important. Renee's going to talk about her idealization process. Renee's going to talk about her idealization process, and it's going to be a really powerful episode. So I'm really hoping to get a lot of comments, a lot of questions sent in to our emails. And with that being said, let's go ahead and get right into it. Idealization. Wow. It is exactly what it sounds like. I have also termed this like the dream life, if you will, like your absolute best life possible. Idealization is when you think about what your ideal life or ideal scenarios behind any given anything would look like. So you can idealize for your life. You can idealize for your relationship specifically with your significant other. You can idealize for what your hospital environment would look like. You can idealize for what your ideal veterinary job would look like. You can idealize what your dream body or what your ideal body would look like as well, what your ideal bank account would look like. But today we're going to kind of lump all of that together when we're talking about idealization and talk about your just ideal life, how to map that out, how to create that, and how to work towards that. And then again, why that is so important. Renee, what do you think about idealization? I know you've done this some. Talk to us a little bit about idealization.
And before I get into mine, actually, do you want to distinguish a little bit, just briefly, the difference between idealization and visualization? This way, the listeners have a concept as we move forward in this particular podcast.
Yes, that's actually a really great point and a great request, if you will. But so we're going to be talking about visualization because we lump them together because they are almost inseparably related, but they are different. And on probably the next maybe 2 podcasts from here, we're going to be talking about visualization. The next podcast is going to be about specific how-to tips for or idealizing. But visualization and idealization are a little bit different, because idealization is the mapping out and maybe the writing down what the ideal situation is, if you will, for you. So for example, I may write down that ideally my body would have six-pack abs, and maybe I've got a bicep vein, and I don't have the little jiggly thing under my throat and on my arms, like, so that would kind of be like the ideal behind it. But visualization is the actual thinking about and the details in your mind, and maybe you even put this down on like a vision board, and you think about and actually feel what that would feel like if you were to already have the abs, if you were to already have that bicep vein. Like, how would you feel? How would you act? How would you carry yourself? Like, you can actually visualize what life would be like if you already had your ideal life. So idealization is the mapping out of what it would actually look like, and the visualization is sort of living that out in your imagination. And if you already had that. Was that clear enough, Renee? I know that was kind of a roundabout.
I think so. I think so. Absolutely. You're great at explaining that. And it's really just a difference of having something in your mind's eye and then bringing it down
Yes.
into a physical level of, something tangible. And, I am a big proponent for paper. I know in the tech world and the digital world, a lot of people are moving toward that. And I think that there's still some merit for if you're using a computer program or a phone OS to map that out. But I think that there's like a level up almost to bring it to a paper level, because I think that it's a different feeling. And we know that through scientific research, there is a, response that when you write something down, there is a neurological response to that. And so I do a lot of my work on paper. But so with idealization in
Like
mind and with
your
writing that down.
idealization, okay. Mhm.
Yeah. So, well, anything really. I mean, me, my calendars are still on paper. My journals are still on paper. I do still use digital products. I take notes. I take reminders. I use my phone for this, that, and the other. But I also have 17 Post-its in front of me at like most times, So I do both. But with my personal development process in this regard, for the idealization, I am a paper and pen kind of girl. I think that there's a huge benefit to that. So it feels different. I feel like I am able to, okay. I feel like technology distracts me, if that makes sense. I feel like if I am in the backyard, or I am in the office, or I am in my bedroom, or in my car, wherever, when I have a piece of paper and a pen in my mind, I get different results. When I open up the laptop, things change. When I open up the phone, things change. I can almost feel a shift and like a drop off of energy, maybe that's like working toward that. But, there's this kinesthetic response that happens when you are using one's own body to write out words that we inherently have given such meaning to. We have conditioned ourselves. We have subscribed to certain beliefs. We hold certain value behind certain words. And there is a huge power that kind of comes from that when you are writing that down. You kind of almost, when you talk to someone and they say, "Oh, I haven't said that out loud before," or ooh, it feels more real now that I'm signing the papers, right? So there are tangible, palpable shifts that people can feel when you bring life to your thoughts, to your words, to your written words, right? So, and a lot of our mentors and our role models
So
talk about that.
that's awesome, and I believe that's a really good point. And in terms of idealization, is that, for me, I have several different terminologies for idealization. And so
Mhm.
in my business, Dream Life Motivation, I call it the Dream Life Description, and that was something that I lived by. It was a typed up sheet of paper with bullet points, and I would go back and write in those small refinements to the things that I had on that dream life description. My ideal life, what would it look like? And I would look at that every single day.
Mhm.
And I would only put the things on there that I really, really, really wanted to experience in my life experience. And the other thing that I call it through Get MotiVEted is your well-being description.
Mhm.
So in terms of idealizing, like for your well-being, what things are necessary? What would the most true well-being life for you look like? And with that being said, Renee, when did you first start sort of intentionally idealizing? And I say intentionally because I believe we all idealize to a certain extent at an unconscious level. But when we start doing it consciously, I believe that it makes a world of difference when you know that you are trying to get to point B from point A, and you start to make weight on that process because you idealize and because you visualize and because you took massive action towards that. When did you start doing that initially?
Mm. That's a really good question. I would say that in my adult life, the maybe a few years ago, where I maybe before that. It's hard. So I would say 2 points. One being passive. Oh, here's a good one, right? One being passive and one being massive. And the passive is sort of where it is here and there, and there's not a lot of action taken toward that. The massive would be a few years ago, I think, when probably I really remember a few years ago being in the backyard and really starting to write stuff down to change my life. Yeah. Um, and then there's this other level that just recently I have taken, because I still have tendencies to think what ifs, and I still have tendencies to think negative and in a worrisome mindset. You guys know my story, but if you don't, like, those are some of my tendencies. And I have a new practice that I have merged mindfulness and idealization on, and visualization for that matter, to where I've merged these practices so that when I am trying to create something and I notice myself caught up in a thought that is not helpful, if I can extract something out of it that helps me plan better, I do. In then when it's no longer serving me, if that thought process is no longer serving me to plan better, if it's just, rumination over like, what if this or what if that, happens, I can use mindfulness to notice that pattern, stop, take inventory of what my experience is in that moment, and really consciously make a shift to say, okay, now what's the best case scenario? And I do that on two levels. There's that really big level as far as life, but then there's all the little small nuances in life that matter. And so, just recently, I've had two things come up for me that I did this process on because they were two really big, important things. And sometimes that's when we get the little guy on our shoulder, our little gremlin. That's when he gets bigger. When there's something really important to you, the worry maybe gets a little bit bigger, and you can sort of justify it or reason yourself into believing that, oh, well, it's worth worrying over because it's so important. But it's those things in particular that if you're driven by your well-being, you are able to say, no, it's because it's so important to me that I need to shift my thinking, and I need to shift my energy and my well-being toward planning and then letting go, so that if I can't control the outcome, I'm still experiencing a higher quality of well-being, and the people around me feel the same way. They're not getting the wrath of, a disappointed Renee. Instead, they're getting the, essence of who I am, even at my highest quality self. They're getting to be around that. So there's that little
I think
level
that's a
up.
really good point that you mentioned. I think it's a really good point. We talk about you at your highest self, and to me, that's a big part of idealization. In that you can be who you want to be, you can have what you want to have, you can do what you want to do in life, and in any given situation, and in any moment in time, basically. And I believe that a big part of why we're even having the well-being issue in the veterinary profession to begin with is because we've lost track of, or maybe we never even knew of, the power
Mm-hmm.
of idealization, and the fact that maybe your childhood dream was to be a veterinarian. Many of us, we idealized as a child, right? We said that I want to be a veterinarian when I grew up. We set the ideal. And what happened? If you're a doctor so and so and you have a DVM or a VMD, I think it is, then that means that your idealization, what you idealized as a child, or whatever, whatever point in your life, it manifested. It manifested. But when you were a kid, you weren't thinking about what type of schedule do I want to have as a vet.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't thinking about what type of family do I want to have as a vet? What type
Mm-hmm.
of experience do I want to have as a vet? What type of clients do I want to work with? What type of boss do I want to work for? What type of organization do I want to work for? What values are important? How much money do I want to make as a vet? These things didn't cross your mind when you were 5 years old telling your parents or whoever your guardian was that you wanted to be a veterinarian. So now it's time for us to revamp what that ideal is. And for me, there's a certain amount of hours that I want to work as a vet. There's a certain amount of money I want to make working those hours. I want to spend time with my wife. I want to spend time with my daughters. I want to see the world. I want to change people's lives. I want to help my colleagues. I want to do all these different things to make a contribution to life, to make a contribution to the veterinary profession.
Right.
But I had to go back. This is in 2016. I had to go back and re-idealize, what does my dream life look like? And guess what I found out? I didn't want to be at the veterinary practice that I was at.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to be, and I have to pause for a second. Guys, if you hear my dogs in the background, I'm a vet. I've got 6 of them. They're crazy. They're downstairs. Sometimes they protest and they bark. And so I'm not going to go back and edit that out. And I imagine you guys can understand. But if you can't, I apologize. At any rate, and if you hear a bird screeching, and if you hear a child screaming and or screeching at any point in time, hey, sometimes there's a kid involved, sometimes there's a bird involved, sometimes there are dogs involved. My apologies in advance. But at any rate, I want to make a contribution.
Mhm.
I want to do certain things. There's a certain lifestyle I want to live. And when you start to map out, when you start to point out the details
Mhm.
of how your ideal veterinary life would look like, which you didn't do when you were a kid and you were 5. You didn't do that. And that's why maybe you're working hours you don't want to work. Maybe you were dealing with clients you want to deal with. Maybe you're having problems within the profession. Maybe your well-being isn't where you want it to be, but when you start to say, okay, I want to be a veterinarian that has an amazing life of well-being, that has an amazing life of fulfillment and grateful clients and, an awesome team that's focused on well-being and this and that, I want to travel, whatever things you want in your ideal life. And when you're doing this, and we'll talk about this a little bit next week, you have to do it as if you had a genie. Okay, Will Smith and the new Aladdin's out. Renee, have you seen that yet?
No, and I don't know that I will. It didn't pique my interest.
Oh my,
I don't know. I don't know.
oh my
Perhaps,
God! So
perhaps.
did you like Aladdin as a kid?
Yes, it was one of my favorite movies for
Did you
sure.
like it as a
Mhm,
kid?
mhm. Yeah, it was one of my favorite movies for sure.
Then you have to
I
go
love
see it. I saw it. It's awesome, and it just reminded me that you know what, all you got to do is ask, and in my situation, of course, there's more to it than just asking. I like to take action because action to me is fun. Getting on the phone or doing this
Mhm,
or creating this or creating that and sharing it with others, making podcasts. The action for me is fun, but the manifestation is guaranteed.
mhm.
Okay, so just like you're a vet today, if you map out your ideal vet life, it's guaranteed to you. It's guaranteed to you. Now you can't have contradicting behaviors and things like that. And we'll talk about that. But Renee, do you think it is possible for an individual to coincidentally or just by happenstance or by chance to achieve their dream life, their ideal life, their life of well-being and complete happiness? Do you think it's possible to just for you to wake up one day at some point in the future and have that?
Well, I let me answer it by like this. So, I think that a lot of things are possible, and maybe, everything's sort of possible, but not probable. And what I mean by that is, I was just listening to something that a well-known celebrity was talking about, and she was mentioning how when she finally got the leading role that had eluded her for so long, she still wasn't happy. And then after noticing that, she found her tribe of people that brought such another level of fulfillment to her life and belonging, where that increased her happiness. That mattered more than just the role or that goal that she was going toward. So, kind of back to the vet, you know, if that's your goal, or even for our para staff, as a vet tech or as a kennel worker, receptionist, what have you, if we have a goal in mind of having a job or being a certain, you're wearing a certain hat within the profession, there's so much more to it. And I noticed that in my life, there were certain goal points along the way where, okay, check, check, check. But again, I struggled with my well being. And so it was more important for me to start directing my life with my well being in mind. And the other things were a part of that where it made the shift for me. And so when you think about a, ideal life or a dream life, again, like you had mentioned, most people don't think about all of the other aspects. And most people plug in certain players based on what we see in other people's lives, and sometimes that is, there's no self study involved. And so when you are being raised at a time where it says, gosh, I hate to do it, but I'm going to do it. You go to school, you get married, maybe there's some gender roles in there, maybe not, you get married, you have kids, whatever, and then you find yourself unfulfilled. If you're an actress, you go out to, New York or LA, you live this certain lifestyle, and then right, so we have these really big moving pieces, or these big puzzle pieces that we've plugged in based on what we think we know. And there's not some self-study involved. And so when there's self-study, inventory, reflection, that's where the things come in to say, what are your values? And not the values that you were raised with based on your parents' value system or belief system, organizational system, religious system, whatever the case might be. But what are your unique values, priorities, qualities that matter in your life?
Right.
And how do you build that? And so that's when you start to plug in those pieces. And so, even when, and I guess there's the age-old story of the opposites. So, you have a girl, you've seen the princess movies, right? Someone just magically becomes a princess, oh, your dad, whatever. And then they're just, it's not them. Or you have a princess who, it's not her, she wants to lead a life of freedom. And so it's so personal. It's very personal. And I think that it's, maybe, if you were to say, like, this is the kind of life I wanted to lead, and then you went through some things and maybe you were a little less conscious of it, but still making decisions that led you toward that. Maybe it was living in a warm state, and so you ended up moving because what have you. So maybe there are certain pieces that come to you more easily. But I don't think that you kind of just wake up one morning. And if you do, I think there's a fear that's involved where you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so you're not really fully able to embrace it. And so what happens is, even if you are in your ideal life, if you're not paying attention, you miss it. You miss it because you're so in fear of the other shoe dropping, or you wake up and you go, oh, wow, I wanted to be married and I wanted to have kids, or, oh my gosh, I have my dream job. Here I am. And then you get fearful, or maybe it's, oh, I wanted to have a savings account and now I have it. And then you get fearful. So I think that's just, and then you kind of miss it as it goes by. So I don't know if that really answers the question, but what do you, I mean,
no, I think you did a great job answering it. First and foremost, anything's possible. We can just go ahead and say that maybe one day you wake up and everything is, ideal as you would want it. If you were to take the time to write out everything you would want in your ideal life, that you'd be like, okay, I've already got all of that. But that's one of my main points, is that you won't even know that you're at your dream life or that you're at your ideal life if you don't take the time to write out what that would look like. So maybe you're thinking that you want more out of life, and then you map out the things that truly mean a lot to you, and you're like, wow, I've already got all of that. There is a really cool story that I'm going to tell you guys at the end. I'm going to have to go find it because I want to read it verbatim from the book that I got it from. It's really short. But at any rate, I'll do that at the end. And Renee, remind me if I forget. But I like to use the analogy of, let's say, for example, I said, Renee, I'll give you $1 billion if you go from point A to point B. Okay. And Renee's going to be thinking to herself, Well, that's awesome. Yeah, I'll get to point B. And I'll tell you, Renee, it's somewhere within the United States. You're like, oh, okay, awesome. Even easier. I don't have to but I like an overseas international plane ticket. Okay. And then, so what's Renee's next question going to be? Are probably like, what are the details? What are the stipulations? But she's going to want to know, okay, so where's point B? So I can go get this $1 billion. And I'm going to say, I don't know. I don't know where point B is, but good luck finding it and let me know when you've got it. Okay. Now, I believe that life for many of us, and even for myself, was like that. There was this $1 billion lifestyle. And when I say $1 billion, I don't mean like I had $1 billion worth of cars and fancy houses and clothes and all of the newest gadgets and gadgets and things like that. No, 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 no. I just mean this life where when I wake up in the morning, I'm like, this is the exact ideal life that I've always wanted to live, where I've got the freedom to do this, and that. I'm making a contribution, or I get to spend time with my family. I've got financial freedom and X, Y, and Z. Like, these are the ideal things for me. But for many people, there is a there is a dream life. There is an ideal life for every single person on the face of this planet. Everyone has desires. Everyone's got that. And everyone can have the things that they desire. I honestly believe that. There is no limitation. There is no shortage of resources, of abundance for any one person that exists on the face of this planet. But if you don't know what your point B would look like so you can go get that $1 billion, then you will never, in my opinion, you will never find it. You will never find it because you don't even know what that is for yourself.
Well, and I think that I will say this. I think you're right to a degree of, we need to know where we're going. But I also think that there's some real power in contrast. So for me, in my journey, when I set out on my individual journey, and when I think about that, here's the thing. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew where I didn't want to be. And that was living a life of anxiety and depression, insomnia, GI, back pain. It was a real, that was the life that I didn't want to have. And that was the life that I didn't want to experience. And I had no idea what it was on the other side of my rainbow kind of thing. But I knew that I had to start. And, I just flicked over, I have this calendar. May 31st said, climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow till you find your dream. Oscar Hammerstein II. And I kept that one because that's where I have talked about, I started reading. I started with my research and I started to turn over what I consider to be every pebble and every rock. There was no stone unturned for me. I was like a detective trying to solve a case. And that case was, like a cold case for me. I mean, it was really like I just had no freaking clue. But, Abraham Hicks talks about contrast a lot. And it wasn't until I started to read her material and listen to her philosophies that helped me appreciate the contrast and finally understand what it meant and how to use it in a beneficial way. And since I was a child, that was my goal, was to understand. And if I could understand something, that I could get on board with it or not, but I could move forward. And so for me, I think that's important because I think that depending on where you're at in life, sometimes you don't have to see the whole staircase just to take the first step. Martin Luther King told us that, right? You can start to take that first step in faith and know that point B will eventually, and I don't want to get too magical. I don't want to say like reveal itself to you, but you will find that point B. You will create that point B. You will uncover it, because as humans, as mostly maybe Americans that are listening to this podcast right now, but one day it probably won't be, as global people, we are conditioned in such a degree to bury stuff. We bury it, and I'm getting so passionate right now, but we bury it to where we don't know where it went. And it's so far down, and it takes a lot of work, inner work, to unrust those dream gears and to dust off those books or those nuggets of individuality that help us figure out what that point B is. And if you don't know where you want to go, by no means does that mean do nothing. By no means, absolutely not. Because I promise you, if you start to climb every mountain, ford every stream, if you start to turn over those rocks, if you start to do the work to just say, even if it's one thing that you get more detailed with, or if it's one thing in your life and then another thing tomorrow comes up and you go, oh, you know what? I'm really tired of sweeping the floor. My ideal job would be that I don't have to clean anymore. So then you work toward, a more of a leadership position, whatever the case is. I mean, things will start to come to you. When you change the glasses that you are looking through your life with, those lenses change. And when you've been wearing those glasses for such a long time, it's really hard to see what another world could look like to you. And so, another world, okay, right, Aladdin, a whole new world. But so I think that that's really important.
Oh wow, your voice is pretty good. I've never heard you sing before, but yeah, that was good. You want to do more?
Maybe after I see Aladdin.
Give us a little more. I'm just kidding.
So yeah, I think that.
Yeah, Will did a good job singing, man. He's got that part too. But
okay, yeah, I know. I was like, Will Smith. I would never have pictured him as like a blue genie, like the blue genie. But yeah.
No, they turned him back black.
No,
for sure.
I just mean
they turned him back.
as
Yeah, he's brown in the movie.
Well, I mean, just like I would have almost pictured him as like here's the thing. Okay.
I think he's blue at the very beginning.
As a child, I felt like Aladdin was a good-looking character. Okay, I'm putting it out there. I put it on the table. I said it. I think he's a good-looking character, and so like Will Smith to me has always been like a really good-looking guy, and so to put him in like this cartoonish sort of like genie CG kind of thing, it just doesn't match in my mind. Like I don't know who Aladdin is.
He's not cartoonish.
But he's kind of like.
He's not cartoonish. He's like he looks like the Fresh Prince, man, with a ponytail.
With a ponytail and a beard. That's so funny.
And some really crazy looking clothes.
He have some, like,
and some really crazy. He's
pants?
not blue.
Does he have like puffy like genie pants, like almost like what he would wear in like back in the day?
A little bit, but the take-home message is that he's not blue and he's not a cartoon. He looks like blue, man. I'm trying to tell you. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to jump in and say that I think you're absolutely right, and that you don't have to know exactly where that point B is, but when you're unturning stones, that is already a part of point B. When you're mapping out what you don't want, by default, that's telling you kind of what you do want in a sense, right? Like I don't want to be stressed out all the time. I want to be stress free.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense to know where point B is. And this is the last thing I'll say about point B is that I spent a lot of my life wandering aimlessly. And so the results that I got in my life were aimless wanderings of an aimless wanderer. And so you are so right to understand what point B is and to hold on to that stuff. If something matters to you, hold on to it. Figure out a way to hold on to it. Be grateful for it. Show up in that relationship as the person that wants to hold on to that person. Be the person that they want to be with. But if that doesn't matter to you, you're going to show up a lot differently. The energy that you bring forth to your job and to a professional relationship, if you don't respect and, appreciate your manager, you're probably going to treat them differently, right? And, and vice versa, your employees, if you want them to stay, show up a lot differently. Who do you have to be in order to get this life? So having that plan B, again, like I said a few years ago, that's really changed the way that I have shaped my world. And we know that the way, we shape our world comes from us, but then our world influences us at the same time. If you have a support system around you, like when I got the divorce,
Right.
My
Right.
support system that I had built in North Carolina, that was really important to me, and I didn't want to give that up. And so, that can really make big strides
Right.
in your
Right.
life.
And I just want to say that for clarity, you said plan B. We're
Oh,
talking
point B,
point
point B.
B,
Oh,
and
did I
I
say
think it's
plan
probably
B?
just an accident. An
Yeah.
accident, you know what I'm saying? And you did say plan B,
Mm.
but it's all good. But and I just want to add that point B isn't in and of itself really important to me. It's the process of knowing that there is a point B, of knowing that there is an ideal life, and then starting some process, whether it's through contrast of saying, I don't want this in my ideal life and I don't want that in my ideal life, or, going straight forward, this is what I want in my ideal life. And Renee's exactly right when she says that the contrast is important. And Esther Hicks, or Abraham Hicks, the person that we're talking about a lot, she mentions that, in that if you don't know what your desires are, think about the things that you don't want, and that'll help you to sort of naturally come up with the desires of the things that you do want. But by simply sitting down and saying, what is it that I would
Right.
want? You've already started a very magical
Mhm.
process. I know Renee said it's not like poof, the magic genie
But it's
necessarily,
yeah,
but it's
yeah,
magic that has already
yeah.
started. And I guarantee you, if you continue to do that, because if you say, okay, I just want to be happy, you're going to
Yep. Mhm.
start maybe looking for books on happiness, watching YouTube videos about happiness. Maybe join Get MotiVEted's course, which, says that you
That's
can
right.
help you get
Yeah,
more
I mean, the
happiness. I don't
good
know. But there are so many different things that you can do. And as you start to do those things, you're going to uncover
yeah.
more things naturally. And then maybe you say, okay, it wasn't happiness that I wanted. It was joy. It wasn't
Right.
happiness that I wanted. It was
Or
fulfillment. It wasn't
yeah.
happiness that I wanted. It was fun in
And
the
what's
sun
the
in Florida.
process? And that's where you start to embrace the process. So the good life is a process, not a state of being. It's a direction, not a destination. We've all heard that phrase of, it's not
Right.
about the destination, it's about the journey. But, again, those are things that we've probably heard time and time again growing up. But who's really ever stopped to smell the roses on that? To really appreciate the process, that the people that you have met along the way matter. The way that you have shown up along the way matters. You needed to live these certain things to prepare you for what is next in your life. Oprah talks about that. The life that we're talking about, and the contribution that we want to have in the veterinary profession, is to help people along that road in their own world. We are all on our own journeys together. That's the quote that I'm going to leave people with. Like, that's the one that I've sort of made up, because it is a process, and it is a direction that holds our due north. It's a compass that helps us stay on course, or adjust course for that matter. But it's not a one single destination, because then you wake up, you look around, and then go, and then what? And so it's always evolving.
Yes, I love that. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that I am living my dream life. Is
Mm-hmm.
it perfect necessarily? Not necessarily, but the the process of knowing that I am reaching out for my dream, and by understanding mindfulness and personal development every day, really is really, 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 really awesome. And you probably won't find many people who say that they're living their dream. They're even in the process of reaching for their dream. And I'm gonna leave with a quick story. I was doing surgery one day, and I asked my nurse who was running anesthesia, and I said, if there were a genie, and that genie would give you everything you've ever wanted in life to the finest of details, like what would you ask that genie for? What would you say to that genie? And she had no clue and no idea and of what the ideal life would look like. And again, you don't have to know what B would look like necessarily. You just need to know that there is a point B somewhere, and start that process of
Mhm.
discovery and so forth and so on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that a really good point is with the idealization, like I had mentioned earlier, there were a couple really important pieces that came up for me along the month. And I have a grand, like a gross definition of what ideal life is. And then there are the things that come up within that life. And idealize, idealization has provided me with relief from anxiety, relief from stress, and it helped me plan things, but also helped me to focus on the good, helped me to focus on that ideal, because we know what we focus on grows. And there was something that had come up for me. So I traveled in March, and I knew I was going to be traveling, say, last October. And there were a lot of really big pieces that needed to come together in order to make that trip happen. And it would have been a very big reason to worry and get upset. But through the process of what is the best case scenario, what needs to happen, and how can I focus on that after planning and letting go in order to just really hope and have faith that it's going to come together for me, for us, it did. It totally, totally did. It absolutely came together. And from October until March, and even now, I am able to have such appreciation for that process and the people that were involved in that process, because I wasn't really worried about it. I, and it made the traveling experience a whole lot better. Now, even after I came back, there were some things that I could not have planned for that ended up costing more money and kind of threw off the next couple of months for us, not just like with Penelope and stuff. And that was a learning process for me. And so again, like, I can change it if it comes up in the future. But for that particular trip, I felt like it came together really, really well. And it was through through understanding the ideal scenario rather than focusing on, all of the things that potentially, possibly could have gone wrong. So I think that's a really good, just example of how it could benefit you,
Wow.
and then, you can just apply it as far as maybe your particular life or your professional goals, something like that. But that was one. And that wasn't super detailed, but if you guys want more details, we'll give it to you. So, Dr. Hawley, let's hear that story.
All right, I've got the story for you guys. Okay, so this is a story from this is a story from a book called The Prosperous Coach: Increase Your
Mhm.
Income and Impact for You and Your Clients. And as you know, Renee and I are both certified coaches. That is something that we love to do for people of the general public, as well as veterinary professionals of any sort. But at any rate, this part says that if you don't consider your dream lifestyle when you begin whatever it is you're doing, you become like the American executive who, in an old joke, arrives on a beach on a beautiful island.
Ah.
Here's the story. The executive strolls down to the beach and notices a fisherman rowing in to shore. His boat is chock full of fish, and the executive asks him what he's doing. The fisherman replies, I've been fishing because I love it, And now I'm going to have a barbecue on the beach with my friends. I'll play guitar and sing and hang out on the beach. And then in the evening, I will dine with my wife under the stars. That's crazy, says the executive. You've caught so many fish. I can invest in you and we'll sell the fish and make a ton of money. Why would I want to do that? Asked the fisherman. Well, in a few months, we could invest the profits and buy a bigger boat and make even more money, says the executive. Why would I want to do that? Says the fisherman. Well, in a few years, we could invest the profits and open a factory on the beach and process our own fish and make even more money, says the executive. Why would I want to do that? Says the fisherman. Well, with all the profits from that, you could eventually retire early, and then you could go fishing just because you love it, and then you could have a barbecue on the beach with your friends, and you could play guitar and sing and hang out on the beach, and then in the evening, dine with your wife under the stars. Start to outline your dream lifestyle now. And so for many of us, I believe that we are sometimes chasing something that isn't even what we really want because we've never taken the time out to think about what is that end game goal that I'm really looking for. Okay, like why do I want to own my own practice? Oh, okay, why do you want that? It may be so that you can have more money, right? And then why do you want more money? So I can have freedom to hang out with my wife and my kids. Like, dude, you can do that right now.
Yeah, that's a big one.
All right, maybe you won't have the practice, maybe you won't have the asset, maybe you won't have that legacy necessarily, but you can at least already have the lifestyle that you're looking for right now, and maybe still have the practice. I'm not saying don't do the practice. I'm not saying don't make a lot of money. But if your end game goal is enjoying your family, do that now because it doesn't cost anything.
Right. The why is a really big one. You know? I remember writing that down as, as a kid, trying to understand things. Back to that, just the why. But Simon Sinek talks about that as adults now is it's not what you do, it's why you do it. And for you and I, again, with Get MotiVETed, it's not what we're doing, it's why we're doing it. And in our own lives, like you said, it's not what you're doing, it's why you're doing it. And can you experience that now? Because if you stop for a second and apply mindfulness and just check around and say, what is my experience? Oh, I am satisfied with my bed. I am satisfied with the food that I'm able to eat. I am satisfied with the clothes that I'm able to wear. I'm satisfied with the ability to provide my dogs food. All of the things that bring such satisfaction and contentment in our lives, rather than being conditioned to, and literally conditioning our brains and our neural paths to complain all of the time, or to, like you said, chase something that may be unattainable if you always have that perspective that you're always chasing something rather than experiencing something in the moment now, as well as evolving and growing or manifesting or creating something that is something new and unique to yourself or to your life or your experience of that.
You're exactly right. And as we sort of wrap this up, the whole process of waking up and having that true purpose and a vision of what it is, no matter how big, no matter how small. I'm not telling you, we never suggest like how much money you should make. We never suggest how many days off you should have, how many clients you should see, because it's none of our business. It's your business. Like, what is it that you want? And what's the background reason behind that? And to always realize it's the small refinements upon something that's already good that makes it great. But you've got to start out with this process of idealizing so that you can say, this is what I want. I want to be a billionaire. And from there, you refine that down and say, I don't even know how to spend $1 billion. Why do I want $1 billion? I don't even want $1 billion. Okay? But to start there, and that'll help you to get to what it is that you really, truly want. But if you don't do this process of idealization, if you don't do this process of creating a dream life description for yourself, you may find at the end of your life, or in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road, or maybe even just a month from now, that whatever it is that you've been doing isn't really what you wanted to do. And the good news behind that is that you can always change course, and that, you can look at your past and say that this happened so that I can discover this or that or the other. But it's so important to do this process of idealization. Next week, we're going to give you guys some solid steps, some do's and don'ts behind how you can create an ideal life for yourself, of how you can map that out and how you can really start to bring these things into fruition. If you start this process of idealization and things start to manifest, or if you just start to feel better about knowing that, hey, this is what I want to go towards, and you start to go towards that and you feel better, let us know about it so we can share that with other members of the veterinary community. I believe that this is a major component of us solving this well-being issue for the veterinary community. And with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in today. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you, Renee, for sharing all of your wisdom and your good information. And we look forward to joining you all on
Bye,
the
you guys.
next one.